Hello guys, and welcome to the video. Today we are going to talk about PvP in the Elder Scrolls Online, and is it any good? Is it worth our time? Should we still PvP in ESO, and is it still fun? Well, that's what I'm hoping to answer for you guys here. So as a quick sum up, I'm just going to say that ESO is a very fast-paced action PvP game, and I have truly enjoyed playing it over the years. It has definitely had its issues, but I truly think that this is one of the better, if not the best patch for ESO PvP that I've seen in quite a long time. And I'll talk about maybe why I feel that way, so let's jump into it. Alright guys, so the first thing that I want to talk about for ESO PvP is buildcraft. Now this is something that historically in ESO has not been the most forgiving thing. Historically in ESO, we have had very kind of pronounced meta builds that overperform compared to their counterparts. But in 2018, I think ESO has come a long way. ZeniMax has worked really hard to kind of balance out the classes, etc. And not just that, but to add more viability to different kinds of play and different play styles that just focus on different aspects of the game, you know? So I think personally for ESO right now, this is probably one of the most open patches when it comes to what you can run effectively in PvP, and that's simply because like it almost has everything. I mean, in Summerset we've had the speed builds come back, so that's a huge change. Hybrids are now viable in PvP, not just like they were really viable kind of before, but now they're like competitive with solid PvP builds, like they're quite competitive. So I think that the buildcraft aspect of ESO is one of the biggest shining things in this game, and it's really something that has personally kept me playing this game for years. If you guys have kept up with my channel, you know that I am a huge fan of buildcraft, and I have spent a lot of my ESO time playing a huge variety of specs and just enjoying having access to those different kinds of builds that you can play and those different play styles. So number one kind of segues me into the second point that we have, and that is overall balance. So the fact that we have access to all these builds means that balance in ESO has really come a long way since launch. Like I had mentioned earlier, when this game first came out, there was a very stark meta that was the end-all be-all, and I really feel like a lot of things have changed in the game that allow you to play the different styles, and that allow the classes to have somewhat of a semblance of balance between each other, even when they're playing comparing styles against each other. Now, there's definitely a rock, paper, scissors going on in ESO. This is an MMO game, and there are so many different builds that this rock, paper, scissors effect can be quite pronounced when you're fighting certain specs with certain specs. But that being said, you have huge build freedom in ESO, and I think that a part of the fact that there's a rock, paper, scissors kind of effect, and you have the ability to just add an ability to your bar or add a set to your build that allows you to circumvent the fact that you're losing the rock, paper, scissors war. I think that right there is a testament to the balance that this game has really achieved over these past 4 years. The fact that we can go and just make a quick change to our build and actually counter something that was hard countering us before. I really like that there's things like that in this game. Now, there are a few problem things that people like to complain about, such as oblivion damage, the new slowed set, etc. This, again, fits along the same lines as Defile that people had complained about in the past, and it's an issue of people just not really running the proper counter to it. And I see posts like this on the forums all the time, and I don't really look at them and think to myself, oh, ESO must be unbalanced. I look at them and I think to myself, well, these players are just insisting on not running proper counterplay to this rock, paper, scissors aspect. And, you know, as someone who's played ESO a long time, I really enjoy the rock, paper, scissors aspect. I think it's definitely needed because there were certain playstyles in the past that were way too powerful, such as just holding block, where that can easily be circumvented with something like oblivion damage now. And I really enjoy that ZeniMax has kind of gone through that effort to balance this game around different kinds of playstyle, as opposed to just leaving one end-all be-all, like a shield stacker being just better than everything else and having no real counterplay to it. And nowadays, you know, if you want to play especially solo PvP, I find that you need a rounded defensive kit to be effective in it, and that to me screams balance. I feel like in the past, people who used to play solo all the time, they'd use 1 or 2 defensive skills, and that would be their defensive kit. And in my mind, 1 or 2 defensive skills is not enough. You're not paying enough attention to your defense. Some of your defenses are overperforming if you only need 1 or 2 defenses to fight everything. So that's kind of my talk on balance there. I really feel like balance has come a long way, and I actually really like that ZeniMax is going more heavy towards dot-based playstyles now, because I've always felt like there weren't enough condition counters in the game, and there weren't enough condition builds in the game. So it's really nice for me to see that get added on a personal level, because it just adds another layer of complexity to PvP and another layer of complexity to your gameplay as well. Alright guys, so let's talk about number 3, and this is kind of a contentious issue for myself, and a lot of other ESO players are going to share these feelings about the lag and the stability of the server. ESO is not very friendly when it comes to lag. I mean, I'm a PvP player, so we're talking about the PvP server here, and it is almost always lagging if there is a full population in it, and it is so hard, honestly, to get into PvP when it's lagging like that. It just doesn't really reward you for good gameplay when you're fighting in lag like that. Honestly, it just promotes people to run in a Zerg, because you can't fight effectively by yourself in lag, because you can't react accordingly. And if you get in an outnumbered fight against 2 or 3 people and you have to wait a second to react, well, you're probably just going to die. So that is a big issue that ESO has had in the past patches and in the past discussions that we've seen on the forums. ZeniMax has always talked about doing things to alleviate the lag in this game, doing things to kind of increase the stability of the server, but lo and behold, you know, it's 4 years later, and I haven't really noticed a huge improvement myself. Every patch it's something new, honestly. Like it's laggy one patch, and then they say they got a fix coming, and then it's not laggy, but then we have a huge frame rate drop every 5 minutes the next patch. So I would just love to see ZeniMax put a little bit more effort into this part of the game. It is super frustrating as someone who streams this game to have to play in the lag all the time. Seriously, if there's any one thing that has really turned me off from this game, it has to be the lag. It really has to be the lag. And also this next issue that I'm going to talk about, and that is the bugs. There's still a lot of bugs in ESO, and that is unfortunately how it is. Now, this is not as bad as it used to be. Back in the past, ESO had so many more bugs. Back when this game first came out, it had so many bugs that people didn't even know all of them. And it took like a year or two for everyone to just find and exploit all the bugs that they could before ZeniMax actually got a handle on them. And I think in this past year of ESO, we've seen a lot of improvements to this game that have really like normalized issues that were resulting in bugs, etc. And ZeniMax has worked really hard, I think, to kind of lock down on the bugs in this game and remove them. That being said, though, it is still plagued by bugs. I can't give ZeniMax too much crap here, because there were so many bugs to begin with that they just kind of had such a huge a quest to just get rid of them all. But yeah, it is something that I do want to bring up, because we do still see a lot of bugs, and some of the biggest ones you'll see in PvP are things like getting stunned twice in a row when you shouldn't be able to be stunned twice in a row. Quite common. That's a combination, I think, between bugs and the lag on the server. And then you'll see things like crit rushing into a loading screen, getting stuck in walls, etc. And these things are just the kind of minor grievances that when they happen back to back with lag, it can ruin your PvP experience and just cause you to no longer want to play. So yeah, I did think that I had to bring that up. Alright guys, so let's talk about point number 5, and this is solo play / Zergs. So there is a rather common kind of conception right now that solo play in ESO is essentially dead, and 1vx is no longer viable like it used to be. And honestly, to this, I can only just say I disagree. I feel like the requirements for 1vx have definitely been upped over the past few patches, and that is a big balance thing. I feel like a big reason why people could successfully 1vx in the past is because we had certain defensive abilities or defensive techniques that were just overperforming, and it allowed a player to invest very little into defending themselves and focus almost entirely on killing their opponents. And I'm looking at things like these permablock builds, and you know, like this is a great example of where back in the past, a permablock build literally had like no counter outside of fear, and this just resulted in super easy permablock 1vx's. And if you look at any early ESO footage, that from the first year or two of this game, 90% of that footage is a permablock build. And I think that right there is just a testament to the fact that people's idea of 1vx is more tied to utilizing overperforming skills than it is to actually being a good 1vx player. Now, a good 1vx player, in my opinion, is going to run a rounded defensive kit against everything. They're not going to neglect a certain aspect of the game because they're an experienced player who knows that if they neglect that aspect of their defense, they will not successfully 1vx. So that is why I say 1vx is not dead. It's just more difficult now. You honestly need to have a better understanding of what's coming at you in PvP, a better understanding of overall what counters what and what is ineffective against what in order to 1vx now than you used to. And I like that. I feel like 1vx requires more skill now. It requires more from the player now than it used to, and only the best of the best can still do it. And I'm totally cool with this. You know, I'm not saying that you know, everyone who can't 1vx is a bad player. What I'm saying is don't expect to be able to 1vx if you don't have a counter to 1vx. Like, seriously, if you don't have a counter to X, if you can't consistently fight X, which is just anything, then you can't complain that 1vx is dead. This just kind of plays into the balance issue and that huge kind of thing we see this patch with things like slodes, etc. If people refuse to run proper counters to things, don't be surprised when your gameplay reflects the fact that you're not running a proper counter to something. You know, it's not that you're a bad player or anything. It's just that you're not running the appropriate counter to something, and that's why you're dying to it. And if you switch your build up to run an appropriate counter, you'll find that you will not have those issues anymore. So that is kind of like my thoughts on 1vx. I feel like it has really essentially improved. Honestly, I feel like 1vx has improved, especially with the addition of the Swifty trait, which adds huge amounts of viability to these medium armor builds that were kind of the ones struggling 1vx in my opinion prior to this patch. You know, we get to use things like speed and terrain to make numbers mean nothing, and essentially that is what 1vx is in my head, is using a smart combinations of your terrain, your abilities, and your build in order to make your opponent's numbers not mean anything. So holding block is not going to do that. And I feel very strongly about the fact that holding block should never allow you to just 1vx. There should be no build that can just hold block and out damage two players. You know, if you're going to beat two players, you beat them because of better decision making, not because statistically your build is more impressive than theirs. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the other kind of half of solo play, which would be Zergs, or the polar opposite, I guess. So Zerg gameplay is definitely something that is prominent in ESO and definitely prominent in Cyrodiil, and I think a huge reason that we see so much Zerg gameplay is because that is what is intended. It is a large open world environment focused around capturing keeps. There are gonna be Zergs, and I know some people, they'll complain about the Zergs and be like, oh, I hate when I get Zerg down, the Zerg's always chasing me. And all I can really say to that is, like, that is PvP, man. If you don't want to fight that many players, don't come to Cyrodiil, go hang out in the battlegrounds. In the battlegrounds, you have that structured environment where at most you can have 8 players attacking you at the same time. Also, kind of regarding getting Zerg down by 20 players, if 20 players are going to chase you down and waste their time killing one player, you can just think of that kind of like objectively. If you look at the Alliance War, the whole reason that these guys are in a group in the first place is to play the Alliance War, is to capture objectives, etc. So when their entire group goes off course to chase one player down, well, in my mind, they're essentially just hurting their team because they're you're having one player effectively remove 20 enemy players from the fight for a period of time. Now, if you guys have ever been part of a keep siege or anything like that, you will know that if one team is missing 20 players for 5 minutes during a crucial moment, it means that siege is not going to work and it's not going to happen. So I think that's just a little bit of a pat on the back for you guys who feel like you're just getting Zerg down all the time and you get frustrated. Think of it this way. You're actually winning the faction war by having these players chase you down because they are not being effective with their number size and with their group. group. They're just kind of wasting their time chasing one guy. So that's something to think about, I think. And then finally, I did want to mention the Swifty trait is super fantastic for anti-Zerg gameplay this patch, and that's simply because you can really utilize the speed, like I had said before, to make the numbers mean very little. And I really like that because a lot of classes in the past have had access to different ways to really increase their speed, and some classes haven't. So the Swifty trait really just allows you, regardless of what class or what build you play, to have that speed option in Cyrodiil. And I really feel like the Swifty trait, for this simple reason, is going to be a very popular trait in the future because it just hard counters Zergs, because you're faster, and if you're faster than the Zerg, they can't kill you. They really can't. So all in all, guys, I think that ESO PvP is a crazy amount of fun. It is definitely something that I feel is a unique kind of PvP amongst MMOs. There's no other MMO that I have played that offers the kind of PvP that ESO does, being just this very fast-paced action-reaction-based PvP. So yeah, I think that PvP is honestly a lot of fun, and I touched on the issues that we kind of have with PvP, so I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about what you think, and what you think maybe ZeniMax could do to perhaps improve PvP, or where you think they could focus to bring more love to PvP, etc. We've had a lot of people leave PvP over the years simply because they didn't like the direction that the game was going, and they felt frustrated by it, etc. And I definitely have been in that camp too in the past, and have left the game during the infamous proc meta because I just got so fed up with the lack of balance. But I feel like in this past year, ZeniMax has taken leaps and bounds towards the right direction with PvP. I've seen a lot of improvements myself just from watching my own gameplay with the changes that they've made, you know, and then finally this Summerset patch, they're really just unlocking buildcraft for PvP, which I think for me really makes it very interesting. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Feel free to share your information that you have in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. I really want to know, guys. So let's talk about it. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. If you guys want to see me play live on Twitch, you can always come join me live on Twitch. And finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They are a VPN for gamers. I want to make them the official VPN for ESO. It's a local Canadian company, and I've been using them for half a year now. They give me about 50 better ping. It's free to try if you guys want to try it out. So give it a look-see if you guys feel like you want some better ping to this game, or just any other game. They support lots of games like a good VPN would. Anyhow, guys, thank you for tuning in. Have a fantastic night, and I'll see you next time.